Hello, my friends. I'm Sam Hardesty, a certified life coach, and welcome to the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey, what's up, my friends? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we are going to be speaking with our guest speaker, Andrea Liguore. She is a music, art, entertainment, and business attorney, and she is absolutely fabulous and so fun. So not only does she advocate for creative individuals, but also businesses so that they can protect and profit from their work. So in 2017, she opened the law offices of Andrea Liguore to serve the Northeast Ohio area because she believes creatives at all levels should have access to resources it takes to set them up for success. Her Cleveland office is located within the studios of 78th Street, where she shares a building with many talented artists, galleries, and other creative businesses. Her clients include musicians, that word is challenging, visual artists, photographers, writers, actors, record labels, influencers, entrepreneurs, and arts-related nonprofits. Like, that's incredible, guys. Andrea received her JD, which is her lawyer degree, with honors from Cleveland State University College of Law. She also obtained her certificate in business law and focused her studies and experiences on music and entertainment law, including the completion of the Great Lakes Sports and Entertainment Law Academy. Andrea is a member of the American Bar Association and its Forum on Entertainment and Sports Industries, also the Ohio Bar Association, the West Shore Bar Association, and the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Association. She is fancy. She's also has volunteered as a connector for the Cleveland Rocks Past, Present, and Future Music Incubator Program and has provided legal education presentations for various organizations throughout Ohio. This woman is a wealth of knowledge, and I am so excited to have her on the podcast. I hope you guys enjoy. Let me know what you guys learned. Feel free to connect with Andrea too, and let her know what you learned most about this podcast. All right, guys, hope you have fun. Awesome. Hey, Andrea, I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Today's going to be so much fun.
I know. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, of course. Okay, so I'm going to open up the floor to you. Tell us all about you, who you are, what you do, all the things.
So I'm Andrea. I'm a music, art, entertainment, and small business attorney. So I work with artists, musicians, entertainers, any kind of creative and entrepreneur that wants to get their legal documents in order, form some type of business, or protect their copyrights or trademarks.
This is very exciting. I'm so excited to keep diving into all these things because I already have so many questions. Okay, funny question. What is the most embarrassing moment out of your entire childhood?
My entire childhood.
I mean, pick an event. Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like I was always just embarrassed about everything as a kid because I was always like, I still am nervous. Oh my gosh, I don't know.
You're totally good. Okay, I'll tell you mine. Maybe your one will pop up for you. When I'm trying to remember, I think I was probably in like 5th grade maybe. And we lived in a neighborhood and there was a bunch of girls that were my age, so we always played, after school together. And this one time it was a weekend and we were going to have a sleepover in the tent in the backyard. So, and there's like 7 of us or something like that. Okay. So half of them, pretty much all of them are in the tent in the backyard. They're playing. And me and my other girlfriend, I have no clue what we were actually doing, but we were in the front yard and we were coming around and hiding behind the fence. And we were just like, oh my gosh, great. Best idea ever. Let's scare them. Like, let's surprise attack, scare them. Okay. So we start envisioning what their reaction is going to be. So we start laughing so hard to a point where I actually peed my pants. And I'm like, well, like literally physically peed my pants. So we know we did not scare them because I had to go back inside and change my entire wardrobe because I peed
Oh
myself.
my gosh.
So that was probably the most embarrassing thing. And then we had to go out and be like, why'd you change your outfit? Oh, because, we were going to scare you and it was going to be so much fun. Like, it's going to be hysterical. But instead, we internalized the hysterical and I peed myself because I was laughing too hard. So, yeah, that was my embarrassing childhood moment. But
So I kind of have a funny one.
yeah.
I think it's just embarrassing to me now because I'm older, but
Oh, for
no
sure.
one else thought, besides me and my brother. So when my brother was still living at home and I was a little kid, he's 16 years older than me, so there's a big age difference.
Yeah.
But he at some point, it must have been for Halloween or something, he got this like gorilla costume, like full gorilla suit with like the gloves and everything. And I don't know how I didn't notice that it was him, but he just like popped up and started like chasing me around the house. And I was like running around screaming bloody murder because I
Oh,
thought a
no.
gorilla was chasing me. I don't know. And then like ran down the stairs. I remember like hiding in my parents' closet at one point, like ran down the stairs and he threw the glove at me from like down the stairs. And like that freaked me out even more. And it took me like a while after that to realize that it was just him in a gorilla costume. But I was like terrified for my life that a gorilla broke into our house. But
Oh,
I
my
don't know.
gosh.
It was pretty funny though.
That's
Not to me as like a
hysterical.
5-year-old, but
Oh, no, of course not. No, not at all. Oh my gosh. That's so there's been so many things that like when you reflect back on it, you're like, if I had a more adult brain, maybe I would react a little bit differently. But sometimes even though like when you're thrown off track, like you're like, what is reality right now? Like what's actually going on? Like you never really know how to respond. So it is what it is. So that's hysterical.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing. That's fun. um Okay, pivoting a little bit. What does living authentically mean to you?
So to me, that means just being true to who you are and in kind of every aspect of your life. So from who you are just on days off, who you are at work, how you show up around other people, to your friends, um, it just being true to yourself and not really worrying about what other people think about that because there's always going to be people that don't like something about you, but you spend the most time with yourself. You're with yourself all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to be happy in how you're showing up and not worry about what other people think.
I love that. No, and I think that is so important. And like I just love that thought of you're with yourself the most. You know, you have to love what you're doing, what you got going on. So, I feel like that is a huge cue to if you are living authentically or not. Is your opinions about what you got going on. So, we'll talk
And I
more
remember
about
hearing like a quote too when I think when I was younger, and I like always try to remind myself of that too, because it's hard to show up authentically sometimes.
100%.
But it was just like be unapologetically you. So
Yeah.
like you don't have to apologize to anyone for being who you are and showing up. So yeah, I always love that.
I love that so much. Yes, all the things. There's so much more. um okay, so we're going to go to layman's terms, like very basics. Just going back to, you know, the basics. Yeah. What is a lawyer? What's the purpose of them? And how do they help entrepreneurs?
So I had this conversation with someone else, another lawyer not too long ago. I think there's really two different kinds of lawyers. So there's the lawyer that does transactional work, which is what I do. And that helps, we help put together contracts, help you with all your paperwork to get your business formed, all the behind the scenes things before anything bad happens and you have to go to court or someone comes after you or anything like that. So The attorneys that go to court, the litigators, that's a whole different realm. And I tried that for a couple cases, and it's not for me. You really have to
Not fun.
be comfortable thinking on your feet and not get offended by what the other person files, which I did a couple times. And I'm like, this is just a standard response. I don't know why I took this personally, but I think that's a whole different area. So I just focus on the transactional work. So it's the contracts, filing paperwork with the state if you're registering your business, filing with the Copyright Office if you're registering a copyright, filing with the Trademark Office if you're registering a trademark. So it's all that paperwork that goes on kind of behind the scenes before you hopefully don't have to get to court. But all the stuff that you do when you start up a business or keep it running.
Okay, so someone who is about to start a business, what do they need and why?
So in terms of legal, right?
Yeah.
Because first you need a clear idea of what you're doing with your business, or at least a clear direction, maybe if you don't know all the details. So I'd say the first is looking into what kind of business you want to form. I recommend everyone form some kind of business entity. The most common is an LLC, so a limited liability company. Even if you're a solopreneur and it's just you and your business, you want to set up some kind of separate entity where all of your business runs through. One, it makes you look more professional than just a random person asking another person to hire them. But two, it shields you from any liability. So that's the point of having the limited liability company, is it's a separate legal entity from yourself. So if there's any liability that happens within the business, or say that you have a lot of loans for the business and the business is going under, sometimes you can still be personally liable through how loans work, but any legal issues all fall within the business. So if there's nothing left in the business, it was all issues at the business and you have to close that up, the liability stays with the LLC, not with you personally. But a nice thing about LLCs, it's kind of a mix of a corporation and a solo. I always blank on that term.
I know what you're trying to say too.
So I never recommend people to use, but when you have a business, but you're not incorporated or anything, it's just you as a business.
Proprietorship.
Sole proprietorship, yes.
Yeah. I was like, I know, I'm so close in my brain.
It's been a while since business school.
Yeah.
So it's better than a sole proprietorship because you have that separate liability, but for all other purposes, you're treated like a sole proprietorship. So all of your taxes goes to you personally. You can take money out of the company when you need to pay yourself and put it in your account. There's not a lot of corporate formalities that happen with LLCs. There's still some things that you have to observe, like having a separate bank account, making sure that you're not just treating it like a shell company and like your own piggy bank, but have separate books and records. But that's really the toughest part of it, is keeping that separately. There is a new rule now that with LLCs, you're going to have to start registering with the federal government, let them know that you are part of an LLC. But again, it's a quick reporting. You don't have too much with that. Another perk too, which I've told a lot of clients, is because I have some people who are thinking of doing, they don't know if they want to do an LLC, but they may want to just register a trade name. Well, with an LLC, at least in Ohio, you register your LLC, you pay the fee once, and it exists perpetually until you close it or it's closed by operation of law. With a trade name, or a DBA, as they're commonly known, you have to register that and pay to keep registering it every 5 years. It's less of a fee up front, but you're paying that every 5 years that you want to use it. So if it's between those two options, you just want to get the LLC and have that set up so you can just have your business and not worry about registering a trade name every couple of years, or in case you lose it, or whatever the case.
So what's the difference between an LLC and a trade name? I mean, you said that, one, obviously you have, we'll say forever, unless you say you don't want it or whatever. But like, does the trade name protect you legally too?
Um, the only thing it really protects you against is other people using that name. So it's kind of like a step below a trademark.
Got it.
Not officially speaking, but just like to visualize it.
Yeah.
It's you register with the state saying I'm doing business under this name. That lets you still open a separate account with that trade name. People can write checks to that trade name and they can be deposited into that account. But other than that, that's really the only benefit.
So it's kind of like a sole proprietorship, which means just you are you as a human, and then you have this name that kind of umbrellas you as a person, essentially.
Yeah.
But it doesn't protect you from liability.
Yeah, it's just a business name that's not your personal name that you're doing business under.
So essentially, like, so someone who is, starting a business, it sounds like creating that LLC, and then, I guess a bank account. Those are like first two steps to starting a business. Is that pretty much right?
Kind of. There's one step in between there. Before you can get the bank account, you need to get your tax ID number. So you register with the IRS, get your tax ID number, and then you take both your certificate of organization and your tax ID number to the bank to get your bank account. So it's those two steps that you'd start off before you get your bank account.
And your EIN, that like tax number, I was always told that's like your social security number for your business, like parallel wise. Yeah.
Pretty much.
So very exciting. Okay, can you give us an example of like how an LLC would protect you liability wise, as opposed to like what wouldn't be protected as a sole proprietorship?
Yeah, so there's kind of two separate examples. One for like if you're a solopreneur, it's just you in the business. Say that you have a physical space that you clients come into, or you're selling some kind of good. If someone comes into your space and gets hurt and ends up suing you for that injury, I mean, ideally you should have business insurance if you have a space or you're inviting people in anywhere. But like if they get a large judgment, the judgment's only limited to what within the LLC's account, or what the LLC has available. So if it's an ongoing business, the LLC will always owe that money. But it's not something that they can come after you, your house, any of your assets personally, unless they're in the business's name. So that's really the biggest, any kind of like lawsuit. It's a little bit tougher with like loans and everything, because if usually you get a loan in the business name, but if the business doesn't have its own assets, so if you're like a service-based business, sometimes you might personally have to co-sign on that loan. But if you're a business that has a lot of assets, like you're in manufacturing or something, all those machines have value, so you can sign against the value of those. So you're not personally liable for that. I think now more banks do want a personal co-signer, so that's not always the case, but sometimes that can help having that separation. But it really is just for any kind of lawsuit that would happen with your business. You just want the business to be liable, not you personally.
Yeah, I think that's. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think an LLC is like the cheapest insurance that's not insurance.
Mm-hmm. And it's especially true for partnerships. So if you and another person are entering into a business together, I definitely recommend some kind of entity, whether it's an LLC, corporation, nonprofit, whatever makes sense for your business. You don't want to operate as a partnership without any kind of formal organization, because with an LLC, you create your operating agreement that says how the business operates. It says if debts need to be paid, how they get paid, who pays them, who's on the hook. With partnerships, it's different in each state, but in partnerships in Ohio, if you're just general partners, both of you have equal rights, and and backing up for a second, the term partnership is carefully defined in like legal terms. So it's any two people coming together just to start a business to make a profit. So if you're doing anything with another person that's engaging in an activity that generates profit, that's partnership. So you really want to get that stuff filed before you start doing any kind of business, because with general partnership law, if one partner takes out a loan in the partnership's name, both partners are equally on the hook for it. So if one person like takes out a loan, goes out on a shopping spree, disappears, the other partner's on the hook for all of that, because
Wow.
the person had the authority to enter into that loan for the partnership. So you have equal authority, but also equal liability. So that's really where you want to get your formal organization together and detail all of that in your partnership agreement, which is part of an LLC, would be the operating agreement. So you detail like who can take out loans, the limit on those. And if one person takes out loan more than like $10,000, then it's not a partnership loan, or it has to be approved by the other person. So there's ways to protect yourself from bad acts of a partner before they happen.
Wow, very interesting. So in our other business, Hardesty Imaging, Ian and I, my husband, we are in a partnership, which is really interesting. And for us, it's, it's one of those things you just do for, oh, you got to do it legal paperwork. And, but technically speaking, he owns 51% of the business. Cause we don't like the idea of doing 50-50 for, just like you hear horror stories, like if shit hits a fan, then you're like, whatever. So anyways, but so sometimes as a joke, if we're talking about like getting new equipment or something, and Ian's like, okay, I really want this. I'm like, okay, but could we wait another, few months? Or I really like this other thing. He's like, I don't know, that 2% difference right now, Sam, is, making the deciding factor here. And so he likes to show off a little bit, but no, we're good on the partnership side of things. He jokes all the time, but okay, so what's your experience been starting a business? Like what like how did you get into becoming a lawyer?
So getting into becoming a lawyer was kind of like a roundabout way. It was, to be honest, it was from Legally Blonde. I loved that movie, and I was like,
Gosh,
I want to be like her. This is what I want to do. And I mean, it was also to have a job where I could wear like cute shoes every day to work.
So true.
So I initially thought about that before going to college, and then we have a family friend who is a lawyer, and they were like, "Don't do it." This was also, I think, when the market was pretty bad, so it was hard for like lawyers to find jobs at the time. But he was like, "Don't do it. It's a bad idea. You don't want to be a lawyer." And I was like, "All right, fine." So I went to school to study to be a dentist. So I got through chemistry, got enough of it to end up getting a minor, and then switched because I hated chemistry. And I was like, oh, I can go to dental school with like a business degree, so I'll go to business school. And then kind of like was talking more with my dad, and I was like, I don't think that I can handle this. Like there's a lot of like surgery and blood, and that's not for me. Yeah. So then I took I think it was a business law course in business school, and like loved it. It just came like second nature to me. There were a lot of people who were confused. I'm like, this is common sense. What are you talking about? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, it might not be that easy for everyone. Like this might just be something that I'm supposed to be doing. So from there, I started looking into going on to law school, and I was like, well, I'll do business law because that's a area of concentration that you can get a certificate in and focus on. And I had no idea that music and entertainment existed. And then in law school, I had a friend who wanted me to take a music and film class with her. And then from there, just loved it because I've always loved music, but didn't want to be a musician, way too bad stage fright. But I was like, this is an area that I'm interested in. I can bring my experience to the business side of it and help musicians and artists. And then I kind of had to start my practice out of necessity because really the like common jobs for music and entertainment attorneys are in New York, LA, Nashville, Chicago, where they have big markets for that stuff.
Mhm.
I didn't really want to move to one of the cities. I like Ohio. I like Cleveland. I like being close to home. So I realized my only option was to either go into a different field at a firm and do something else and kind of like build up my practice from there in my free time, which I didn't think I'd have much doing work at another firm because they give you all the projects that no one else wants to do when you start out. So um, I didn't really want to take that path. So I kind of realized I had to start it on my own if this is what I wanted to do. Um, both my parents started their own businesses. My mom has kids clothing store. My dad was a dentist and started his own practice. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs,
Mm.
but my mom was still kind of shocked when I wanted to go out on my own. She's like, "Why would you want to do that?" I'm like, "This is what I grew up with. Like
Yeah.
it's a lot more stressful, like having to do everything on your own, but it's what I know and like this is what I want to do because you have all the control of your business,
Right.
which good and bad thing, as you know. It's just you that everything falls out on. Um, it's it's not the best sometimes, but the benefits of it really outweigh it. So um, yeah, I just decided this is what I had to do. And from like my second year of law school, I told everyone that I met that I was going to do music and entertainment law. So I kind of started getting my foot in the door then. Um, and even my mom until I started practicing and started getting clients, she was like, no, you'll do business law. You'll do business law. Like didn't believe it was a real area of law.
Mm.
And then once I started, she was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a real thing.
That's the thing.
But yeah, so it started out of necessity. And it, I think I probably didn't think about it as much as I should have. Or maybe it's a good thing I didn't think about it too much because there's a lot that goes into starting a business that you don't really think about. I mean, you do your business plan, you answer all those questions of like, here's how it's going to work. But then all the little details of like day to day, it's a lot. And I always like to tell people it's like having two separate jobs. Like I have one job of being an attorney and another job of running the business. So
Hmm.
it's time consuming and it can get overwhelming at times. But um, yeah, I do love it.
That's very exciting. Yeah. And I love that you were talking about how, um, I don't know, being an entrepreneur, being a business owner is so different than having a corporate job because I always say you're both the gas and the brake of your business. Like if you want to excel in your business, if you want to be more, we'll say financially successful, then like you're the only one holding you back. And then on the flip side too, like if you're not where you want to be in whatever capacity, like you're the one holding yourself back. So I feel like being an entrepreneur, like the importance of like self-improvement is just so incredible. Because you everything's on you. Which yeah, can be overwhelming knowing that everything's on you. But in another way too, I like that because everything's on you. You are in control of where you want to go, what you want things to look like. Versus in a corporate job, like you're kind of told what to do. Um, and I think for me, that like ego part that's like, I don't want to be told what to do. I really like being an entrepreneur because I'm like, today I am watching Netflix or today I'm, writing a book or, whatever it is. Like, but that freedom and that flexibility um is huge. So okay, so what are some things you wish you were told before you started a business?
I think probably that fact that you have two jobs now, running your business and working in your business.
Mhm.
Um, it, it's kind of hard to like explain to someone without totally scaring them away from wanting to be an entrepreneur. Like in practice, it's not that bad. I mean, you just do all the things you have to do because that's how it works. You just go through everything and get everything set up, and it's exciting because you get to make all those decisions of like what are my colors going to be? Like what's my logo going to look like? What's my website going to be? Um, what kind of clients do I want to take on? Like you get to make all those decisions. Um, but there's a lot of like little things that you don't think of, um, oh, I have to find insurance, like different kinds of insurance, or like how am I going to collect payments, or like where do I store client files, like all these weird things that you like didn't think that you needed to know. Now it's like, oh, I didn't even know that that was an issue until now it's come up. So kind of all that stuff too, and like you're on the hook for everything. So like I still struggle with this too. Like I'll get all the work done and then realize that I haven't sent the invoice out because I don't have a billing department. It's me that have to go enter all my time in and then send the invoice out, collect on it, make sure that person's paying their invoice. Like it's that part is a lot of work and it's frustrating because it's like it takes so much time, but you need that part of it to keep your business running. But it's not like those are billable hours for me. It's just stuff that I have to work on. So that kind of stuff gets frustrating. But and also another thing too, after like moving into my office, like not realizing how expensive furniture is and like all the things you need. It's like everything is just kind of like bare bones and you build it up as you go, like with your business and physical space if you have it. But it's hard to like not be at the final place where you know you're gonna be, but like having to go slow to get there.
Yeah. I would always say, like, for someone new starting out is I think the thing that would help them the most is just curiosity. Like being open to what needs to be done to get you to that next step. I feel like especially in the beginning, you're like, okay, this is exactly how it's going to look like. Cause you're in such planning mode. Like you're like, okay, what do I want to offer? How much do I want to charge? Where do I want to market this? What are my colors? Like going through all that. And so when people ask you, oh, so, your new business, tell me about it. Like you have a structure, you have the way of going about things, but then you start selling and you start marketing, you start like getting yourself out there and it's not at all what the hell you thought it was going to look like. And you're like, oh my God, like I think there's the initial part of like, you feel like something is wrong. Like you did something wrong because wait, this is not looking like it's how it's supposed to look. But then I feel like that's where curiosity can come in and really opening that mindset of, okay, well, maybe it's not how I originally thought it was going to look, but, but maybe we're getting to where I want to go though, and whatever. But like, I think having that open curiosity, I think it humbles you also because you're not like, I know everything. Like that's one thing as an entrepreneur, you will never know everything, including like how to like sell your product or how to be the best service person you can be. Cause there's always going to be room for improvement. You might hit that like next version of yourself and you're like, oh my God, I'm here. And then you like see a new idea that inspires you and like, oh no, there's more, so it's like always constantly growing and learning and doing something new, which
Yeah.
I think oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I think that's a big thing too, is like knowing what you don't know and like what you're capable of learning and figuring out on your own, or like when to ask for help or like go to an expert. Um, because as an entrepreneur, you do want to be able to do everything yourself and figure it out, and you want to have control over all of it. But sometimes it's really helpful to outsource to a professional in that area. Like
For sure.
with my website, like I'd probably figure it out. I liked doing all that stuff before, but I realized I didn't want to spend the time figuring that out or getting it to look perfectly or messing something up and not knowing what to do. So I had a friend who's a graphic designer build it, and it's still the same website it was when when it was built, but it still works. But it was done professionally where I never had to deal with it. I just kind of like gave her some ideas, we changed some things, and then now it's set. And if I tried to figure that on my own, I would have wasted so much time like learning
Yes.
things, like trying to figure out different codes or how to get things a certain way, or like, does this look okay? And that I just outsource to someone else. So yeah, like knowing when to ask for help, and you don't have to do it all, even though you can.
Oh my gosh, that I feel like is such a life lesson as an entrepreneur to learn is when to ask for help, because when you start off, it's like, I guess part of it's like this assumption that you have to do everything on your own because you can do everything on your own. I feel like
Mhm.
that's the huge difference is like when we first started our businesses, it's like, oh, I can do all of these things, including the offers that we sold. It's like, oh yeah, I offer all these options. But the more you start getting into it, you're like, actually, I really hate doing this, selling this service. I really hate, creating that work. Um, so we stopped doing certain things, but it's like you have to go almost you kind of have to learn to ask for help because when you get help, I'm trying to even think of an example. Um okay, an example unrelated to entrepreneurship is Meatloaf. Okay, not the band. But the actual food is um I was trying to make meatloaf, like, this was a little while back, but, um and I'm like, "Okay, I think you put some meat in there and some maybe ketchup, and I don't know what else," but my mom always made the best meatloaf. So I literally called her up the other day and I said, "Ma, how do you make meatloaf? Can you, send me over the recipe?" Well, my mother being my mother, she never follows instructions. She just makes shit up. So she's like, "I honestly have no clue how I make meatloaf. You're gonna have to come over, we're gonna have to make it, and then you just document what I just throw in a bowl." And I'm like, Okay." Which honestly though, I should have expected nothing other than that from my mother. So I go over
Mine
there
too.
and yeah, yeah, mom.
Yeah.
So I go over there and um she just starts putting shit in there and I'm like, "Wait, ma, how much was that?" Or how much, how heavy was, how many pounds of meat did you put in there? Or how much spices do you put in there? She's like, "Oh, you just throw a dash of that in and a little mix of that in and that looks good in there." It's one of those types of cooking styles, which
Mhm.
truthfully I've kind of also grown into doing that style. um but what was really interesting is the time I spent asking for help. And I know this is like a very simple example, but I could have spent hours like making shit up on my own, like to make this meatloaf. I could have burned it, I could have undercooked it, I could have just brought it out and taste like absolute shit. And it just take all these hours and then at the end I'm stressed and overwhelmed and just frustrated, right? But asking help from my mom, not only was I able to spend quality time with her, which is fun. Um, Yay, mom. And then, but also when you get exactly what you're looking for at the end of it, you're like, this is what I wanted. And here the thing is, what I like about it too is you always hear the saying, teach a man to fish, right? Like that saying of you can either give a man a fish to eat and he's going to keep coming day after day after day asking for a fish to eat food, or you can teach him how to fish where he then becomes self-sustainable and self-reliant and he can make his own food and doesn't have to ask for help again. At least when it comes to fish. Maybe he'll ask about cows and chickens or I don't know, I'm just making shit up now. But you get the vibe. So
Yeah.
um with this, it's like when like I think having that experience and kind of internalizing it into like, okay, how can I pivot this into, being a business owner? It's really I ask for help more now than ever before. Even if I know for a fact I can do it on my own, like I ask for help. Like I have multiple coaches. I ask experts in their field all the time, random ask questions cuz I think we get to a point where I've done this so many times a certain way, you get used to it and you're like, "Oh, well I already know how to do that. That's how to get done." But when you ask someone else, a professional or an expert or just a different perspective, you're like, "Oh, I never thought about doing it this way," or actually that is more efficient or something like that.
Mhm.
But I think for sure, I agree with you. Asking for help can be a huge catalyst into your growth. And I feel like a lot of times people as a coach, um, people are like, "How do you ask for help about your life or your business owner?" Like, as a coach, it's like a different perspective. It's not like, "Hey, build me," I'll use your example, "a website." Like, here's the beginning, here's the end. Like, I know exactly where I'm going. But in life and as a business owner, you're like, "Okay, well, here's where I kind of want to go." And, I think as a coach, like a really cool thing when you're asked to, I mean, when we hire on clients, or rather they hire us, vice versa, but mutual effects there.
Mhm.
Like I feel like it's the same process though, is you grow so much quicker when you have a coach, because you start learning how to make a meatloaf a lot quicker. Going back to meatloaf examples. So I think that's super important. So when would you recommend someone ask for help in whatever thing they're stuck on? Like when do they start asking for help?
I think just as early as you can. Um, some things that came up like specifically when I was starting out is, um, I mean, one, someone said that it's the practice of law. So it's a practice. You're always changing and evolving and um, updating
Yeah.
what you know and like building on that. Um, so you're always continuously learning there. But um, as far as asking for help, like when I started out, someone was like, use that "I'm a new lawyer" phrase as much as you can. Like take advantage of it. It's like you can be
Mhm.
5 years in and be like, I'm still a new lawyer. I'm still learning, and people are a little more lenient with you, especially in court and stuff, even though
Yeah.
it's not relevant for me anymore. Um, but you just start getting into the habit of like asking for help, even if it's like, hey, I've done most of the work here, but I'm stuck on this. Can you help? Or I don't even know where to start. Can you give me guidance? It's kind of like learning more so how to ask for help, or like how to ask for what you need than when. I think anytime that you think you need help, just ask for it. Um, but you want to build up your network where you have enough people that you can go to for different things or ask questions to, so you're not constantly like having someone else do all the work for you.
Mhm.
um, you have to either know that you can do a part of it and then ask for help from someone else with a different part. So like if you're doing research on something, like you've gotten so far but these two things don't make sense, or like you don't know where to go from here, or um, maybe you don't even know where to start, but this is what you were thinking. Like you can ask for help for like portions of things to get you started in the right direction, or um, kind of guide you on the right path. So it doesn't feel like you're asking too much of someone else. Um, and sometimes you can be asking a lot, and to that other person, it's not too much. So
Mhm.
don't be afraid of asking for help, regardless what kind it is. Whether it's a little detail, just someone to double check, or you have no idea where to start and please guide me. Um, it, it's always better to get a second opinion or someone to kind of guide you or bounce ideas off of than to try to figure it out on your own and then feel worse in the end if you didn't do it right.
I know when I was first starting our business and asking for help, something that I would kind of get caught up on is actually self-judgment. Like I would start judging myself for asking for help, like needing help or even desiring help, because I had this mentality I had to do everything on my own. If I didn't know what to do, then I'm stupid, or like I wasn't smart enough, or I didn't do the right things to get where I wanted to go. And obviously through experience, I've learned to start trusting myself, that I'm not going to judge myself when I ask for help. So it's really opened that up. But like I want you to start talking into like trusting yourself and the decisions that you make. Why is that important?
It's important because it's your business. You know best. I mean, they tell you in I don't know if they tell you in business school, but I've heard this in business school is you're the one that cares the most about your business. No one is going to care as much as you. So you've been in it. You do the day to day. You're doing all the behind the scenes work. Like you know what's going on. So it, or you have an idea where you want it to go. So like trusting yourself and knowing what's the best option, um, even if it's different than how everybody else would do it. If you want to make it work this way and you are working to make it work that way, um, just trust yourself. Um, I went through that so many times of people being like, you can't start an entertainment practice in Cleveland. There's not enough work. You're not going to be able to do that, or you can't you can't decorate your office pink, or you can't have colorful hair, which I've done all those things.
Yeah.
And it's that like, that's become part of my brand now. Like everything is like geometric shapes or colorful, or like there's pink or purple somewhere. And like,
Mhm.
that's me. And I've had clients say like that they appreciate that and they love coming into my office because it doesn't feel like a stuffy attorney's office. And when you're working with like artists or creatives, they don't want to be, not always, they don't always want to be dealing with like someone super corporate, like telling them what to do.
Right.
Um, but if I had listened to all those people saying like that I couldn't do it, or it didn't make sense, or I wouldn't get enough work, or pink's not professional, then like I wouldn't be I wouldn't be living authentically, and I wouldn't be happy in what I was doing. So um, learning to trust yourself is knowing that like things where you can deviate from the norm and it's going to work. Um, but also trusting yourself that when you get stuck, you know that it's okay to ask for help, because I trust my own opinions, and I've made things work when other people thought they couldn't. But if you need help, then you ask. You trust yourself to know when to ask. So um, it's a really big thing to be able to trust yourself in your decisions. And it takes practice, because sometimes if you hear people over and over saying like, that's not going to work, don't do that, you can't do that, it sometimes starts weighing on you. But you just have to trust that you know what you're doing and you're going to do whatever you can to make this thing work.
So, how does one start to begin to essentially foster a more trusting relationship with themselves?
Oh, that's a tough one. Um, I would say just don't think about it too much. Just
Mhm.
start start doing it. Like if you have something that you know is going to work, or you believe in it, sometimes that's all you need. Other people will come around or they won't. But, oh well, it's your business. You do what you need to do. Um, and you can start small. So like if you, I'll use the office again as an example. Like
Mhm.
um, if you want like color in your space, like the desk I'm working at right now is pink. That's a small thing to start with. Like, oh yeah, that's cool. Like no one said anything like this is crazy. I don't like that. Why is this like this? Like, it, so then you can kind of build off of those decisions. Like, oh, okay, like I can maybe do this now, or I can maybe do that. Like, just just go for it. And then you'll kind of build on that too. Like you'll do something that you believe in, it works out, um, or it doesn't, and you learn from it, and now you know how to go a different direction. Um, you just kind of keep going. You keep building on that, and eventually you just learn to trust yourself on the things that are important.
Yeah. I think another beautiful example, or rather just a thing to remind ourselves, is that it doesn't need to make sense to anyone else other than yourself. And I feel
Yes,
like
that's a huge one.
yeah, I feel like we get so caught up in like, well, this other person did it this way, or, if I do it this way, I know my mom or my dad or, that person they're gonna make a comment about it. It's like, it doesn't need to make sense to anybody else. And I think as entrepreneurs, as creatives, as like just people just doing their own thing, the more you do your own thing, the more authentic you're living, in my opinion, then the more happier you become, because then you're not living for other people, you're living for yourself. Um,
Exactly.
so to pivot a little bit, what are some common mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making legally or illegally? Unknown illegally.
Um, so I know we talked a little bit about like starting a business, organizing as some type of formal entity. That's a huge one. And again, it's most important with partnerships. Um, the other one is not having the right contracts, um, or not having contracts at all. So it's always like it's always that risk evaluation. So you can operate without a contract, things could be fine, but if there ever is an issue, like someone's not paying or they claimed you didn't deliver on what you said you were going to, then it's just kind of your word against theirs. So it puts you into a sticky situation of how to resolve that. Um, or I've had people kind of make their own contracts because they're like, I'm just going to save some money right now, which I totally get. And save where you can in your business. Contracts probably shouldn't be one of them. Uh, but I've seen people like either take them offline or create their own, and some are better than others. I mean, some people are able to do it and it works for their business for a little bit, but other times they don't really know what they're doing. So they're just pulling in language that doesn't really make sense. Or the worst is when there's conflicting language. So when you have a contract, it's all put together most of the time specific to your business and your practice and how things work, and it's specific to you. But if you're pulling something from offline, it's kind of generalized. So it's maybe not actually talking about how things are supposed to work in your business. Or it's the worst is if you have a creative business and the contract that you've taken from offline doesn't have anything to do with intellectual property. So there's no protections in there. So then it's an issue of who owns what are the rights. The worst I've seen is someone had, they pulled I think it was a producer, a filmmaker or something, one of those agreements offline. And there was a sentence in there that said something about IP, but it was so vague that it caused more issues than if they hadn't had the contract at all. Oh, no. And there was a huge dispute. I mean, we had to go through settlement discussions and mediation before it got to court. And it was so much more expensive for that client in the long run than just having the contract set up correctly from the beginning. So I think that's a big issue that I see people saying that they're just trying to save money in the beginning. They'll deal with it later. They don't want to deal with it now. Well, you run the risk of it being a really expensive fix down the road, right, than just having something together. And I've had people who want to write a part of their contract and they just want me to fix it. Or they have one that they've been working with. They just want me to take a look at it, or they just no idea where to start and just want me to start over. So it's kind of all situations. And every time I just kind of review and I'm like, this is fine, we can edit this, or that it's not, this is chaos and it's going to take me so much time to sort this out. Let's just start over. So it's not always that you're paying huge expenses up front, but it is a worthwhile investment to get your contracts in order specific to your business and to what you're offering, so you don't have to deal with those issues, and you don't have to go to court, which is my favorite, to not have to
desire. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like contracts are one of those things similar to insurance in the capacity of like, it's a cost that you pay up front, or on a recurring basis. And it's one of those things you hope you never use, but when the time comes and you need to use it, you darn tootin' hope that it is laid out there in all the best ways, because it can save you so many headaches down the road. Yeah, can't stress that part enough. So, okay, so what should people look for in a lawyer?
So I think the first thing is really looking for what type of lawyer you need. So if you're in a specific industry, maybe you're this is kind of separate from entrepreneurs, but like if you're going to work at a new job and you need someone to review an employment agreement, maybe you want an employment lawyer to look at that. If you are starting your business, then you want to obviously look for a business attorney. If you have something that's kind of very specific, so like my practice is kind of a little broad and specific. So I do business law, but because I work with creatives and that creative component, in a lot of my business agreements, I'll incorporate things that protect that person or that company's intellectual property. So their copyrights, their trademarks, their creative works, like if they're a photographer, dealing with the rights there. So kind of someone who's familiar with your business, or like what kind of area that you're in as a business person. You want that knowledge to go into the work that you're hiring them for. I think it's also helpful to find an attorney that you kind of vibe with. At least that's what I look for in my clients, is someone that we're kind of on the same page. We understand each other. It makes sense for both people. So if someone's coming to me and they're looking to go to like some corporate office, they're expecting a secretary to greet them when they come in. They want to talk to someone all the time for scheduling and like talk to someone else on the phone without it. none of that's how I practice. Like you're talking to me, we're dealing with all this together. I'm flexible with how we meet. Um, that's different than a lot of like corporate attorneys that you would find. So it just kind of figuring out what fits with what you need. Um, and another mistake I've seen too, and it's happened to me personally, and I don't take it personally. It just is that I had a client who I was helping them resolve something, and they got nervous that I was a solo attorney, and they were like, "Well, I'm going to go to a bigger firm for this issue and have them help me resolve it." Sometimes at bigger firms, you don't really know who you're working with. Like you could be at the top firm, but unless your case is one of those top cases, you might be going to a low-level associate who's doing most of the work with someone else reviewing. You might not even ever speak to your attorney. You might just talk to someone who's the middleman for you. You don't really know who you're getting. You get the name behind that business, but you don't really know who you're working with sometimes. And it was funny with that same client. They came back later and they were like, "I actually liked how you had handled it. I wish I would have stayed, but I should have just listened to you at the beginning," which was nice to hear afterwards. But it's hard watching that person leave for that one reason. Like going to a bigger firm, you're paying higher prices, probably getting someone less experience if it's a small case. I think there's value in working with a small firm or a solo firm if you're an entrepreneur or if you have a smaller level business, or I don't know. And being an entrepreneur myself, I understand entrepreneurs. So it's really easy to work with entrepreneurs who are starting out. They don't know what they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what kind of contracts they need. They don't know even where to start. I get it because I've been there. So I know the process. I know it's tough in the beginning. And I've worked with clients too of like working out payment plans because they don't have the money to drop all on contracts right away. And I know I get it. You don't have money for everything all at once in the beginning. So yeah, I think it's just someone that is in the area that that you need help with and that you can relate to. I think that's gonna be the best kind of attorney relationship.
I love that. And I love how parallel that is also to a coach. Like as a coach, people are like, "Oh, you're a life coach." Like when they're looking for coaches, they're like, "Oh, you're a life coach. So you must know exactly what I need and how to make me this awesome person that I'm envisioning myself to be." And that's not necessarily the case. Just like when you think of, okay, I have foot pain, let me go to the throat doctor. No, that's not what you do. And just like, oh, this person knows how to make a hamburger, so that must mean they know how to make a taco because it's just meat, lettuce, and tomato, like just different container, right? No, it's so different. So I think finding that person like that specializes in like what you're looking for, what that transformation is in this case in your contracts is so important. And I think no matter what relationships you have, whether that's with friends, family, or people you work with, or that are your clients, or that you're their clients, is like making sure you like them as a human. Because there's so often we get into relationships, we're like, "Oh, but they produce these results, but I hate them, or they're so annoying, or like I don't feel like I am connected with them at all." And in my eyes, like I much rather like connect with someone that I feel fully, I don't know, connected with, and knowing that we can get to the results together, than just be so unconnected and be like, I don't enjoy this at all. If that makes sense.
And sometimes like especially in the beginning as a new entrepreneur, like you'll take on all these clients because you think you need to, and like you need to get all the work you can. But sometimes those clients you think it's going to be a good client, or you think it's going to be a lot of work, and then the client ends up being really difficult, or it's just a really stressful relationship. Like it's not worth the trade-off of having that client if it's a difficult client, or you don't get along well, or they don't trust your opinion, or any of those nightmare situations. So like you don't always need that client. Even if you don't think that you can afford to not have them, you can. It's worth your sanity to say no sometimes.
Or at the minimum, they just become your lesson, like
Yeah.
I know, I feel like in all of our businesses, we've all had, there's always that one client you're like, well, I'm glad I said yes because I never will again, like in this capacity or, whatever. Like you learn so much from your clients, I think.
Mhm.
So it's super important. Um, okay, last question. What advice would you give to other women entrepreneurs to living their most authentic self?
My advice would be to know who you are, stay true to who you are, and trust that you are going to do something great with your business, whatever it is. Um, if you have the passion to be an entrepreneur and to start a business and to go out on your own, it, you're already steps ahead of other people who are too afraid to ever even consider that. So if you've made that decision and you're taking those steps, like trust yourself and know that like it's a really brave thing to do. Um, that means you have that passion to be an entrepreneur, and it's going to be great because it's your business. You make the decisions, trust yourself, and do what makes you happy, even if it doesn't always look right to someone else. If that's not how other people in the industry are doing it, um, you do you, and it'll work out, and you'll attract the clients that you want to work with, and um, it's going to make you way happier than trying to do something else just because you think you should.
Oh, I love it. I love it. So exciting. Okay, where can people find you? How can people learn more about working with you? Tell us all the things.
So you can find out a lot of information from my website, which it was done professionally, as you heard. That's
Which will
at
be linked in our show notes. So
yeah, that's at Music Law Ohio or ligorelaw.com. Either one of those, they'll link you to the same page. You can follow me on Facebook at Ligore Law, Instagram at Music Law Ohio. Um, Send me an email. You can message me on there. However, and yeah, I know socials are kind of a big thing, especially when you're an entrepreneur. So if you're following me on there or trying to find me on there, don't judge the lack of socials. Um, but
no
yeah,
stress. I
any of
feel
those
that.
you can reach out, and I'd be happy to talk. Even if you're not sure what you need to ask, just want to get some ideas, let me know.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate taking your time. I'm so excited to uh see all the fun things that come after this.
Yeah, thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Of course, my pleasure. Guess what time it is? It's offer time. Andrea is offering a free initial consultation to anyone interested in legal services, or if they simply just have a question and aren't sure what type of legal work they may need for their business. All you have to do is send her an email to schedule a time to chat. Check our show notes for all of her contact information to get on this offer. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Authentic Entrepreneur Podcast. I hope in between the words of this episode, you found more of your authentic self. It would mean the world to me if you, 1, like this episode if you learned something new, 2, share this episode with a friend who you think needs to hear this, and lastly, 3, to follow and subscribe to this podcast. I want to hang out with you more. Don't forget to tag me on Instagram, send me a DM, wave hi, whatever floats your boat, all at Sam Hardesty Coaching. That's at Sam Hardesty Coaching on Instagram. And hey, look at you go, learning new things, becoming more self-aware and shit. Absolutely crushing it, my friend. Thank you so much. I love you. And until next time, stay authentic.